Good afternoon. Today is May 9th, and you are listening to the live feed of the Indigified podcast, sponsored by the Great Plains Action Society, right here on KWTN 100.9 FM, Allen, Nebraska, the Big Voice Radio, official radio station of the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska. As always, all opinions shared are not a reflection of the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska, the Big Voice radio station, or the Great Plains Action Society. Today we will be talking about healing justice. So we do want to start off with a trigger warning. We just ask that you take care of yourself throughout the episode, and definitely practice your self-care practices, whatever that looks like to you after the show. If at any point you feel like you're struggling or just not feeling like yourself, feel free to reach out to Trisha or I, and we will be glad to talk with you and figure out how to get you back.
Right on. So
Yes.
Welcome back. We're on episode 2.
Season 2, episode
I know, right?
2.
So how's it going? We have to do this mental health check-in because mental health is important.
Yes, girl. Always the mental health check-in. I feel really good.
That's good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel really good. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, as always.
Right.
Got caught up in some Facebook drama.
As always. No, I'm just kidding.
Not as always. I'm super undramatic, but, sometimes you have to address things that need to be addressed, and people are going to respond how they respond, and it is what it is. You stay true to yourself, and you keep pushing.
Yep.
Outside
Absolutely.
of my Facebook drama, I'm doing wonderful. I have a massage booked for after.
Self-care.
For after
Hey, we're
the
going to
show.
talk about that today too. I love
Yeah,
it. I
so
love
I'm
it.
super excited. I'm like, what time is it?
Love that.
Ready for this massage.
For sure. So I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Just busy. So last week we had MMIW, and it can always be very triggering, but we did the fundraiser over the weekend and it was very successful, and I'm like so excited that we raised almost $1,000 for the MMIR powwow, and that was from Chief's Tacos.
Yeah, shout out to Chief's Tacos.
So
They were great.
Yeah, it was just a really great time. It was awesome to see all the community come in and support, and we had baked goods too as well. I made my little brownies and cookies and things like that, so it was really cool. I loved it, and I think there is another fundraiser for next week, so I'll talk about that later though. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good.
Good.
As always, I'm busy, and I feel really good. Yeah.
I'm good. That's good. I'm happy that you feel good. One thing I was sad about is that I had ordered my tacos. I had 2 tacos and a plate of nachos. And then I was hanging out, just waiting for you to show up. And you had something going on. And then I was like, ooh, let me grab some new posters.
Right.
There's new ones I haven't seen yet. And then, bam, there was a whole table of cookies. And I was like, oh, I want one of all of them.
That's awesome.
I was like, don't look anymore.
Yeah, no, I really love to do the baked goods and things like that. So it's kind of my form of self-care, which we're going to get into as well.
Right.
But before I start, so I'm going to throw this out here. So more than half of Americans are without this. And can you guess what it is? We'll talk more about this later in the episode. But first, Monica, have you ever heard of healing justice?
I'm trying to look for the answer to your question. I'm like, what is it?
Well, what do you think it is? I mean, like, just thinking, like healing justice. Like, what would that
Oh,
look
okay,
like?
because at first I was like, clean water. More than half of America is without something that pertains to healing justice.
It's kind of, it's woven in there. I feel like there's a lot when it comes to healing justice.
Like, I'm just still trying to peek at my paper. I don't even have glasses on. I can't even see. I don't know. Like, see, because like at first I was when you were talking about it, I was like, okay, I was thinking of something like something superficial. Like, okay, things that I have access to that I take granted for. But then when I think about healing justice, it makes me go deeper, right? It can't be superficial when it's coming to healing justice, because that's not a superficial thing.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know, the best answer that I can, or the best educated guess that I can come up with is like basic human rights.
Yeah, no, that's definitely in there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm excited to find out,
Yeah.
Trisha. I like that little cliffhanger you did, girl.
okay, so healing justice is not a movement, but it is a framework. And it's all about creating spaces for communities that have been historically marginalized and often experience trauma and grief through social injustices. So this could be overt racism. This could be gender-based violence. This could look like, what else is there? Just racial inequities, to name a few. The healing part is creating spaces for these communities by the communities.
FUBU.
Yep.
For us, by us.
FUBU. Yes. And this is basically to hold space and talk about their experiences. While the justice component, it focuses more on how to build power and how to change those systems of oppression and everything that comes with that. So education, training, this could, look like self-defense, things like that. So that's kind of what healing justice is. And this is something that was brand new to me as well. I think, what was it, last year? We did a cohort with Camila Cabello.
Yeah.
The Havana.
I think that was almost 2 years ago.
I think it was,
because last year is when you introduced me to it, when you did the cohort at Justice Shop in South Sioux.
Yes.
So I think it's been 2 years.
I love when you mention the workshop because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so cool.
I know.
But
Good.
yeah.
If you Google us, it comes up like the interview that we did with, is it Iowa Broadcast Radio?
Oh, the Iowa Public Radio?
Iowa Public Radio. Yeah. Our interview comes up. I was reading it the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that we did this interview.
Yes. So healing justice is, I feel like it isn't like a brand new thing, or like, I don't want to say it's a trend or anything. I think this has always been around.
Right.
But I think after the 2020 political election, so the presidential elections, was rough, and we were amidst a pandemic, and so a lot of organizers and just people in general were burnt out, and as rightfully so, we have a lot of systems of oppression that, ultimately that's what it is. It wears us out and it burns us out, so that way we can't really focus on what needs to be focused on when it comes to racial equality and everything that follows with that. So healing justice was something that was brand new to me, or the concept of it, and back in 2022, so last year, we did a cohort with the singer Camila Cabello, which I love her. I'm just like, I totally fangirl. Like,
that's your celebrity. Like, even the way you say her name, Camila Cabello. Sound like a Dasani commercial or something. Camila Cabello. Okay, sorry.
You're all good.
I know. Let me focus.
No, she did this. She launched it right after the political elections, and this is basically for like BIPOC grassroots organizations to focus in on how they could, do self-care, but also how do you create those community care spaces that are so rightfully needed. So I guess my question here to you is, what does care look like in our community? And to kind of preface that, care, I looked up the definition of care, and that is to be concerned, solicitous, which is a new word that I found out today, which means anxious, concerned, eager. So yeah, I was like,
say it again.
Eager. Solicitous.
Solicitous.
And I had to click on the little
to
like,
hear it. Yeah,
the
little where Google speaks it.
I like that. I like that.
Solicitous.
So what does care look like in our community?
So in our community, as in the Native American community,
the
Native American women's community, the women's community.
I think it all. I mean,
we have so many communities.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Into.
Like, I guess just start somewhere. I mean,
so okay, let me dig in my bag here. So our self-care differs between tribes, right? Because we have some tribes where women can sweat, and we have some tribes where women are not permitted to sweat. But I feel like sweating is a big self-care practice, just to really let go of all that like negative energy that we take in on a day-to-day basis. I feel like maybe the best and the biggest part of self-care within the Native American community is our community. It's how we come together and have meals, or even when there's a passing over to the spirit side, the whole community shows up and they have meals with the family. And you have people that, take care of everything, from the families that cook and from the people that watch the fire and make sure that the fire is burning for our time. Not to put too much of our culture just live on the radio, but I think that's my biggest, best, and favorite part about the way that we take care of ourselves in our community, is just the way that we actually come together and care for one another in those times of need. When we don't have a time of need, we might be like, Monica's over there running her mouth on Facebook again. But if I was like sad or I was having a hard time, people are going to be ready to cook for me. People are going to be ready to come and take care of chores for me. Like, oh, I'm going to wash your dishes, or I'm going to take care of the laundry. Don't worry about it. I'll take your dog. Saint, shout out. I'll take Saint out.
Saint, shout out. No.
Or like, because there's been times too where I just needed somebody and I would text you and you were like, okay, well, do you want to meet at the shop? Yeah. Do you want to go to Sweetwater Drop?
I know, right?
You guys Shameless can promote
plug.
The show.
We're looking for sponsors.
Right. But yeah, I think when I think about our community and what self-care looks like, I think of community. I think we do self-care the best when we rely on one another. And I think it's just a part of our upbringing and our teachings is to take care of one another.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think traditional medicine spaces, talking circles is a big thing too. Which I like talking circles, but also like I just like when people can just get together and just talk. Like, you don't need necessarily a feather to, but I like the idea of like taking turns and being able to express, everything. But I can't, like, if somebody starts talking and then something comes up and I'm like, I gotta talk.
Yeah. Squirrel.
Right.
I have something to say. Light bulb.
Right.
Starts raising your hand. Ooh, me. Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, these spaces are really great to come together, have conversations. What are your thoughts about therapy? Because I know there's a westernized paradigm of what therapy looks like, but also there is traditional ways to do therapy, which, again, I'm going to shout out Morningstar Counseling because, that is Native led and, it's more cultural specific. Man. But it is culturally specific.
Right.
And then we also have like peer-to-peer counseling. So what are your thoughts on different forms of therapy?
So I love therapy. I push therapy. I think everybody should have a therapist, whether you need to sit down and speak with them once a week, twice a week, once a month, once every 3 months, once a year. There's not rules. I don't know. I guess that's kind of a vague statement because there is rules.
There are rules when it comes to like confidentiality and things like that.
But you get with your therapy provider, your care provider, and you set your schedule. You let them know what you need. So I'm very big on therapy services. I even do peer-to-peer counseling within Moon Wellness, and I have a few clients that just come by. And they get stuff off their chest, but I always recommend having a licensed therapist. I'm big on that because they go to school forever to be able to, not forever, but they go to school for a long time.
I mean, it feels like that.
It does feel like forever.
It does.
But they go and they have these different teachings that a peer-to-peer counselor does not have, and they understand the chemistry of the mind and what happens after we go through a trauma, what happens, after PTSD, once you're healing from it. So I love therapy and I love my girlies. I only have a group of girls that come in for peer-to-peer counseling, but I love those girlies. I love that, they feel safe within my energy. They feel safe sharing stuff with me. And that we get to have a fun time. And I think that's one thing that people don't realize is sometimes therapy is fun. Therapy is not always laying on the couch and there's a doctor there with a notebook that's just writing down your every word. Yeah, and like looking at you with their glasses on the tip of their nose. No, sometimes it's fun. You have art therapy. One of my best friends, Molly Pace, she is the lead therapist at Heart Therapy. That's her own practice. She also has another therapist within her practice, Cassandra Bishop, and they do art therapy. So, you know, you're not just sitting there, you're engaging, you're doing something creative, you have an outlet while going through therapy. And then she does like art therapy groups, I believe once a month. And that is through, I think it's like Heartland Counseling Services that sends people to her for those art therapy groups. But yeah, therapy is different. My therapist is a talk therapist because, you know, a girl likes to talk. So I'm like, look, lady, I just need you to sit and listen. Tell me if I'm going off the rails, you know, give me some guidance, or just love me and support me. If I'm doing great and everything's good, I've got a good mindset, love me and support me. If I'm kind of like, girl,
you gotta reel it back.
Yeah, you gotta reel it back in. You're doing too much now. Then she lets me know that too. So yeah, there's a lot of different forms of therapy. So I feel like I'm rambling, but I love therapy.
I love when we ramble because it's like there's so many things to talk about.
Right.
So the art therapy, I know that you do paint and sips.
I do paint and sips.
Do you ever have people come up to you afterwards and like they're just like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, I just love this. And like, have you?
Yes, yeah, all the time. So I definitely set the scene. I have a playlist specifically for Moon that is more calming. Now, it's not like elevator music. It is like current, you know, mainstream music. But I picked the more like calming and songs that promote like self-love and feeling loved and self-empowerment. So I do set the scene with that. I always have incense burning. And then like I don't have the music super loud. So there'll be times throughout the process where there'll be conversation, and sometimes people bring friends. So sometimes conversations will get loud and there'll be big auntie laughs and whatnot. And then it's in every session, there's always at least 1 to 2 moments where the room is just silent and everybody is painting, they're listening to the music. And it's not like every person with every session at the end is just like, oh my gosh, girl, this was so relaxing. But I do hear it at every session from at least one person, and I'm like, good.
I'm definitely one of those people because I think we came for, what was it, Indigenous Peoples Day?
Or Native American History Month. You came in November for the Eloy Beta piece.
Yes, and I had forgotten how much I love to paint,
right,
and like do art in general. And so after that, after I went to the paint and sip, I started painting at home and just spending more time with my kids to do art stuff with them. And
art is important.
Yeah, it really is. And then over the weekend, I went over to Art Sioux Gallery and seen all of the Sioux City students' artwork.
Oh, art sucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it was Sioux or sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. I love it. I love the name because it's our airport call, SUX.
Yes,
so it looks like art sucks, and I'm like, yeah, I love that. Like,
but it was awesome to see all of the art there, and there's so much talent, and art is just so needed, and it is a form of therapy to me.
Definitely is.
It's great to really be able to convey whatever it is you're feeling and put it out there, and it's for you to create, and it's for you to, there's no boundaries when it comes to art. It's whatever you put onto the paper, whatever medium you want to put it on. So,
and it's a healthy outlet. It's been my outlet since I was little, like to the point where I was always doodling. I would get in trouble because in class I would be doodling, but I would retain more information if I was doodling on my notebook than I would if I was just sitting there, you know, giving my full attention to the lecture. So I love art. Art is great.
Yes. So another thing too is conflict management. And so I want to, so I'm glad we're having this. I'm glad we're having this conversation today, as of today, at this point in time. So I want to talk about conflict management, but also restorative justice. So restorative justice is an approach to justice that seeks to repair harm by providing an opportunity for those who harmed and those who take responsibility for the harm to communicate about and address their needs in the aftermath of a crime.
AKA accountability.
Yes.
Accountability.
I feel like the SpongeBob.
Yeah, I know. Anytime you see me do that, that's what I'm referencing is SpongeBob and his rainbow.
That's awesome.
He's a vibe.
So when we talk about healing justice, so we're creating these spaces within our own communities, and I feel like a long conversation sometimes and an apology goes a long way, but also to giving the power back to whoever it was harmed, the ability to say, yes, I do want to meet with the person who caused me harm, or no, I don't. And this is, they don't have to give reasons at all.
Right.
They don't need to speak about what happened to them. They don't need to say anything at all.
You don't.
So what does it look like as far as in our community with conflict management and restorative justice? How do you think that would, look like? I mean, because I feel like back in the day, right. Traditionally,
real
what
back
was
in
it?
the day.
You said last week
back in ancestor times.
ancestor times.
Shout out to my ancestors. Ancestors, shout out.
Right.
They had it going on.
Yeah.
But
they had some things put into place.
They did, yes.
Yeah, so
they did. They had repercussions for, these major crimes. I don't know that we called them crimes at that time, but, But, what were you saying? Because you were going to say back in the day?
Yeah, no, back in the day. So there were different ways to handle, things that have happened to, whether it's our children or other women. I feel like there were societies or, like a warrior society, or men had different roles, women had different roles, but also we're in a whole different time, right? Where like there is non-binary and gender and these things that don't, like follow the traditional way, I guess.
Right. We don't have those little sections.
Yeah.
We have like a bridge.
Right.
A bridge between the two. And then we have a bridge that goes where it's just like, I'm just a human.
Right.
And I respect that. I love that.
So I guess my question would be, what would it look like for us to practice restorative justice in our communities? Would that really positively affect our communities, or would it be something that's negative? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Okay, here I go. So it definitely depends on which side of the fence you're on, because would restorative justice be good for our community? Absolutely. Restorative justice is good for any community. People should be held accountable for their actions, and that's just, on period. What does restorative justice look like in our community? Not sweeping things under the rug.
Yes. Yeah.
So, for restorative justice to happen, we have to stop sweeping things underneath the rug. We have to hold people accountable. Is it going to feel good for the person who has to, what was the word? Oh, it's just restorative justice. So the person who is responsible for the restorative justice, no, it's not going to feel good. It doesn't feel good for any of us. It's like being a kid and your mom tells you you can't have any candy until after dinner. And then you eat the candy, you get in trouble, you have dinner, but in your little mind, you're thinking, well, I'm going to get candy after dinner. Well, no, now you don't get it, and you don't get none tomorrow either. Right. I always think about when kids get in trouble because it's innocent, but it's so heartbreaking for them. So is it going to feel good for them? Is it going to feel good for the people that want to protect them? Is it going to feel good to the people who would rather just sweep it underneath the rug and not have to be tied to it? No, it's not going to feel good, but it's necessary. But you know who it's going to feel good for? The victim.
Right. Exactly.
The victim gets their power back when the person who has caused harm or ill feelings towards another person is accountable, who simply just says, I am so sorry for hurting you in that way, and genuinely meaning it, because I could tell you I'm sorry and not mean it, but we can feel that energy, right? When someone is sorry and they genuinely mean it, you feel it in your heart, and it's easier to forgive them. You know, maybe you don't forget what happened, and maybe you guys aren't best friends or whatever the case may be afterwards, but you forgive them and you're able to move on for yourself.
Yes. I love that. So I'm going to go deeper.
Oh my goodness, Trisha. Okay, let's do this.
All right. So now that we have that, right?
Yes.
On a societal level.
Ooh.
What would restorative justice look like? Because, you know, we have this, you just laid that out so perfectly, right? But we're in this time and age where a lot of the things that are put into place, a lot of systems, a lot of institutions, and just wherever you are. And this, again, it stems from the doctrine of discovery.
I thought you were going to say something about stocks and bonds, and I was like, where are we going here? This sounds like a different episode. Tony, where you at? Because I thought you were supposed to be here for our financial literacy episode.
Sorry.
Okay. Societal level
of restorative justice.
And that's so, you're right. You did go deep, because there's so much unpacking and revamping and recreating of systems to do, to even like,
right?
To even make like a minor difference with healing justice, because it's essentially still that same idea. We have to hold the people accountable, and those that are responsible for it need to hold themselves accountable. Right? But, ooh, baby, prison reform. We could have a whole episode about prison reform.
And maybe we will.
Yeah.
And maybe
we might need to write that down. But we have prison reform, and then we have, what is it called? Just like, you know, just the justice system in general, and the way that they handle criminal cases where it's a violent offense, and you know, there's an offender and there's a victim, because so many times when we have cases like this, our victims don't get justice.
They don't.
And the offenders walk, because there's so many violent crimes that happen that can't be proved. And that just sucks, because what do you do for them?
Yes.
You know?
I'm glad that you said that, because I had recently something that happened to me, and it was hard going through that whole process, because we were on the prosecuting side and not the defendant side, and it felt like there was more protection to the defendant side than it was for the prosecution side.
Right, because the defendant has to fight harder. Right. Like, you know, in a sense, both sides are fighting, but the defendant is fighting for their innocence, whether they're innocent or not. Right. Their lawyer, their attorney is going to fight for their innocence. Like, attorneys are paid to lie. It is what it is. But go ahead. Sorry. Yeah,
no. I'm glad that you said that too. 'Cause, I don't know, like, I felt like in that particular situation, and it goes to where you live, I feel like, because I live in Sioux City, and we had just got a new Woodbury County attorney, and all of the other attorneys were stepping down. So now it's like, I'm trying to fight for my justice, but also there is some real challenges to that, because there's not enough attorneys, prosecuting attorneys, to help me fight for my justice. Right. So therefore, let's just get this done and over with. And it's a simple conversation between both attorneys. Okay, well, blah, 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 blah. And we'll agree on this, and then we'll call it good. In that whole process, I felt like I wasn't necessarily involved with that. And that's when I'm like, that sucks, because I felt like in that particular situation, the defendant actually had more protection than I did. And it should be the other way around, when it should be the victims that have the more protection, that should have a more say in what happens to who harmed them. Right. So, but yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, because they just want to get the dockets out the way, girl, so they can
That's
go
what
get
I'm
them
saying.
some lunch.
See, that's
I be hungry too, you know, but sometimes we need a little bit more time. Don't push me out the way. I think I'm hungry.
Right. We're going to Reets after our eats. I always say Reets.
Is that where we're going?
Maybe.
I know. Shoot. Don't threaten me with a good time. Okay, sorry.
What? Now I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Yeah. So we were talking about in the judicial system how the offenders seem to have more control of cases versus the victims or you know, the prosecuting side. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, prosecuting and defendant side. So yeah.
So in kind of putting it in this context, the judicial system itself wasn't really necessarily made for marginalized communities to begin with.
Right.
So when it comes to restorative justice within our own communities, how do we handle that and what does that look like?
Right.
And like I had mentioned, I think it was last week, there had been a situation that had came, you know, to me and we all had to meet and, you know, we all willingly came to meet, I should say that, because everybody was willing to meet and have this conversation and address the issue.
Right. Which is great.
Yeah, which is really great because it is when you have those very uncomfortable conversations that good things will come of it, even though it may seem very uncomfortable and ugly at the time. Some of those conversations do have a lot of valuable lessons within them. And so I felt, you know, not even just going off of like the healing justice work that I have been doing, but being able to implement that and seeing it in my own community. It was nice. It was really nice. And, you know, we tried to navigate through that situation as best as we could. Could there have been some other positives to that situation? Of course, like how we did everything and whatnot. But I feel like when we are trying to have these difficult conversations, whether it's between families or communities or, you know, just whoever, it does get a little uncomfortable. And it may be the first time that we're all as community members trying to do something like that. Because we've relied on these systems for so long and we still keep getting the same, you know, results, and that's really no justice being served at all. Right,
because the systems weren't designed for us. They were designed against us. And so the question is like, how do we change that? And I think the most simplest answer is to occupy those spaces. I know right now the Sioux City Community School District is looking for Native American and African American student counselors. So if anyone who's listening has a background within that, is it counselors or like liaison officers?
Liaisons, I think. Yeah.
So if you have a background in that, or you have a degree like in that field of study, which, you know, I do not, so I'm not sure what that field of study is, then I highly recommend that you apply, because you are important, and there are kids in the Sioux City Community School District that would love to have you, that would love to have someone to talk to about their days and when they're having rough times that they can identify with. So occupying spaces, we have to occupy spaces. We can't be afraid to occupy these spaces that were not designed for us, because baby, this is Indigified. We are taking things back. Okay. We are creating spaces and opportunities for us.
Yes. So that brings me to my next kind of topic here. So a lot of people talk about self-care versus community care. Okay. So there is, I want to say, when it comes to mutual aid, that some views are self-care is another kind of capitalistic grab, right? Yeah. So it's like, oh, self-care, let's go have a spa day, or let's go do this or that, which I'm going to explain my stance on everything. Yeah. But also that it should be more of a community care. So mutual aid is like, having the care distributed horizontally and not so much vertically. So like everybody puts in their share, and that's how you get through things. And especially when it comes to the capitalistic world, because you know, the division of labor and things like that, it doesn't add up, because it was never meant. It's meant to, you know, protect and benefit people of power and privilege.
Right. It's supposed to be like a luxury.
Yes. So self-care is, you know, an individualistic, selfish, if you will. That's some of the view, or some of the views that, you know, some people have, is that it's very individualistic, and that it's selfish, and that, you know, folks should focus more on how the community can do these things together.
Right. So continue to pour from your cup without anybody refilling it to take care of other people.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
And then community care is obviously, again, just kind of reiterating that it's more of a distribution of responsibility and care for the community overall.
Right. Okay.
So my stance on that is, I like self-care, and I need self-care.
I love self-care.
I love self-care. I do, because as a person that is trying to create different spaces and advocate, and sometimes just have really ugly, uncomfortable conversations,
right,
I need self-care.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be able to function and do the things that I need to do. I do think that community care is also good, and I think that it needs to work together. If I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of anybody else.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's kind of just my stance on it. What do you think?
Samesies.
Samesies.
Samesies. I completely agree with you. Self-care is very important. So is community care. But like you said, if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't take care of anybody else. Now I can push myself to take care of other people while neglecting myself, but then that often leads to imploding, exploding, projecting onto people, and then at that point the community care that you're providing is kind of null and void.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yes. So if you were listening at the beginning of the episode, I said more than half of Americans are without this. Monica, what do you think it is?
Well, I said basic human rights, but I already read the papers. So I went off left field. I went real deep. But
would you like to read the paper?
Yeah, I can read the paper. I'm pretty good at reading. Okay. So according to the National Council for Mental Well-Being, the demand for mental health services is stronger than ever, with nearly 6 in 10, which equates to 56%, Americans seeking or wanting to seek mental health services, either for themselves or for a loved one. These individuals are skewing younger and are more likely to be of lower income and have a military background. The large majority of Americans, roughly 76%, also believe mental health is just as important as physical health. So and that is from the Native American.
Oh, no. Oh, that was, So this is the National Council for Mental Well-Being.
Okay.
But I had put Native American veterans because when you think about the military force, whatever arm it is, a lot of our Native Americans are in this statistic. Right. Because once they come home, maybe they don't have the resources, and especially for mental health services.
Right. Access to a VA hospital, a VA behavioral clinic. Yes. So just I wanted to point that out because I think that's something that needs to be talked about here in tribal, like tribal lands, and also like in the city, whether it's Native American veterans or veterans in general, because they come back and are traumatized and have PTSD, but there's this overwhelming statistic of needing mental health services and it's not there. Right. So having that talk about how do we implement healing justice? How do we create those spaces? So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is this surprising to you? No. But I think even when reading the paragraph or, even if we were just having a discussion outside of the show, right? I feel like my biggest primary concern is children, because children cannot enroll themselves into mental health services without a parent. So if the parent doesn't believe in it and the child wants it, the child doesn't get it. And I think that's super unfortunate. And then again, like I said, I just think everybody should have a therapist because they're amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that, I guess I'm unfamiliar with like the foster care system. If a youth is in foster care and they want mental health services, is that available to them, or is that something that's like automatically something that is offered? Or
so it depends on the case. If the child has gone through trauma, then the child is going to have some type of therapy service. Of course, that can differ between urban and rural areas. But the child always has a social worker. So if the responsible, what are they called? Guardians. If the responsible guardians are not accepting of the child going to therapy, maybe to hide, or they just don't believe in therapy, then that child's able to talk to their social worker. But there's always a lot of gray area when it comes to social workers, because, you know, sometimes social workers don't have a lot of time. They have a huge caseload and they just need to, you know, cross all their T's, dot all their I's, get out of there and go see the next kid. Whereas some social workers will make that extra time. There is good social workers out there, though. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, so I feel like kids in foster care probably have more access to therapy services than children who are raised in their biological homes.
Man, so now that we're talking about, you know, the art therapy piece and things like that.
Shout out to Molly.
Shout out to Molly.
Love you, girl.
That makes me think about, you know, some of the legislation that comes down when it comes to our school, like our public education systems, about art, like wanting to take the arts away and things like that. But
arts and music programs.
And then banning books that have a different, you know, not a different, I should say, a lived experience accounts of, like, you know, what it is coming from, you know, a person of color's view.
Right.
Or,
yeah.
You know, whatever.
Our history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Banning our history.
Yeah. Basically.
Essentially.
Yeah. Yep. And voices.
Right.
The right to our freedom to write and express ourselves and things like that. So it's, man, now that we have this conversation, it is really ridiculous and disgusting to see that legislation come down and wanting to take the arts away and things like that when it's so needed. It's
needed, but the school systems get more money off of athletics than they do, what is the arts called? The fine arts department, you know? So does it suck? Yes. I was an art kid. I was athletic too, but, you know, I wasn't like... I wasn't making the only thing I was making the school's money for was Title 19. My athletics were not bringing in money. I was an athlete because I loved it and I was a little aggressive. But art, I was in an art class almost every semester. I had to be. And there was times where I'd be like, oh, this is such a drag. We're doing still life. But looking back, when I went to college for studio arts, I still did still lifes and I enjoyed it. So I felt like I was just kind of being stubborn and I was like, I want to do pottery. I don't want to do still life right now. But yeah. Arts, I feel like arts is what made me want to go to school more than like the socializing aspect. Definitely more than athletics because because I like to talk, you know. So sometimes you get in trouble when you like to talk and then you're having to hit the, what do they call them now? They call them ladders. Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what a suicide is?
Yeah.
Okay. So
which, by the way, I'm like, why do they even? I'm like, no. Like,
so I tried to use like the politically correct term of 2023. So I don't think they call them suicides anymore. I think they call them ladders, which like visually that makes sense. Except when you go up a ladder, you go up it. You don't go up, down, up, down. You know what I mean? But I'm not here to critique the name of this exercise, but I did a lot of ladders in high school. So I didn't look forward to that. but I loved games.
That did suck.
But yes, art is important. This goes back to however many episodes ago when we said it's just important to vote and to know who you're voting for, because your child deserves access to a fine arts program. Girl, I played the violin in like, I don't know, like 3rd grade, right? Mm-hmm. Was I good? No. My grandma had came and visited, and I was like, I'm going to play you hot cross buns. And I was so confident. You know, my grandma's a tough Native woman. She's not going to fake it with you. And the whole time she was just like, ooh, ah, ooh, and like covering her ears. And she was like, that hurt. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt so good about this, but okay. But I still felt good about it.
It builds character.
It built character, yeah. Now when my nieces and nephews play the recorder, I'm like, ooh, girl, you missed a note. But that was great, baby. You did so good. Let me record it. Let me make a Snapchat. You're so good at this.
One day. No.
You're going to make it, baby. Just stick with it. You're going to be a famous recorder player.
Every day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because like your baby did the recorder and he did so good at the spring concert. Yes, Dom.
Yeah, he did.
I was like, what? I was like, where'd Dom go? And I'm looking and he's over there in the recorder group. And I was like, yes. I was like, I love that. I looked over at Vanessa and I was like, Dom's playing the recorder. And she was like, oh my God, he's doing so good. And I'm like, girl, we can't even hear him individually. But yes, hype that baby up. He's doing amazing.
Busted out Kenny G.
Right.
Like, dang, I didn't even know. Okay.
Right. We played hot cross buns
on YouTube.
Right. No. Shout out to Weston. He has a YouTube channel. You can animate him. Okay.
My bad. We're okay. We're way off now.
It's a good conversation today. You can tell that like our energy is high and full of positivity. Sure. I love it.
Yes.
Okay. So back on track.
So the other part of the healing justice is obviously the justice part.
Right.
And so a lot of that has to go with the education, training, and building power.
Okay.
So do you remember in the workshop where we were talking about, you know, like obviously we did the sex trafficking prevention.
Yes.
But also there was a piece in there where we talked about building power. I don't know. I don't think you were there.
I don't think I was there. I don't recognize it.
So basically, like, the justice part is, you know, addressing all the systems that are oppressive and how do we change them? Well, how do we change them? Do you know?
Occupy the spaces.
Yeah. So we need to occupy spaces, right? But also, too, so I like that you mentioned, like, people need to learn more about what's going on, whether it's on a local, state, or national level.
Mm-hmm. You taught me that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sure did. No.
You did? Yes, girl. I give you your flowers. You taught me that.
But I want to educate everybody on that, or advocate for that, because a lot of people, I feel like, especially like in our Native communities, are like, no, that's like a colonizer, you know, system. Yes, it is. However, sometimes we have to participate in those systems because, again, every time that I've gone to a march, a rally, an action, anything where I was like, yeah, burn it all down, it all tied back to a decision of board of directors that doesn't represent the whole community. Right. It ties back to, you know, just legislation that is harmful. And I think the more educated... So, like, reading books about, you know, the history of the land, but also what has happened over the time, you know, just learning more and more from different perspectives, whether it's Malcolm X, whether it's Martin Luther King, whether it is, you know, just different history, like parts of history.
Right. And those were two very different perspectives on just those two name drops from the same era, same civil rights that were being addressed, but completely different perspectives. Right. Yeah. I love that. That was a good name drop.
Yes. And so when I think about, you know, the civil rights movement, I also think about the Black Panther Party. Right. Yeah. And I started watching Dear Mama.
I haven't started.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm like, oh my God, we just talked about Tupac. Like,
yeah, I feel like we both think of like the Black Panther movement because we're both kind of aggressive.
Yeah, no, we're definitely aggressive. Okay,
anyways, we are very peaceful, aggressive people. Anyways.
Pass passive aggressive.
Yeah.
But I think about what the Black Panther Party was able to accomplish, and that was because of the education of reading these books and learning about the different, societies, or like, whether it's Karl Marx or communism or democracy, things like that. The more that you educate yourself, the more that you're going to be able to show up and actually occupy these spaces and actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And calling out people,
Call them out.
Call them out, man. Call them out. But also call them in.
Right.
Like, this is problematic and here's why. Here is my perspective. And then having a conversation.
I like to call them out.
Said,
I like to call them out and be like, now what? What's your response now?
Right.
Okay. Right. Okay. Ooh.
But yeah, no, I mean, like, having workshops and having these spaces, right? Mm-hmm. So creating these spaces where we do implement, however it looks like to your community, the healing aspect of how these systems or how something has happened to you, and being able to divulge, but also like empowering you to move through those systems. Okay, so this happened to me, but how am I going to positively impact my community? And where am I needed?
Right.
But also learning to tie in the self-care that capitalism and everything that has been constructed on a society level.
Right.
That it was meant for us to burn out. It was meant for us to be distracted. Whether you're working your 9-to-5 job or whatever, it's meant for you to not really succeed and be the billionaire or do this or that.
Right.
But also just encouraging that mutual aid is a way to get through those systems and those institutions. If we rely on ourselves as a community, we can navigate through those systems of oppression together, and then we can create our own way that is beneficial to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in response, 1, knowledge is power. 2, our body system is not designed for what society has assimilated us to. So please practice self-care, however that looks for you. I definitely encourage getting outside versus being inside. We're in our warmer months. Get you some sun. The sun does amazing things for our mental health. It does amazing things for our overall wellness. Yeah, those are my responses, the way you just said.
Yeah. So do you have anything else that you want to like conclude this with? Any thoughts about today's conversation?
I love today's conversation. I don't have any other thoughts about it. I do want to know if we're going to do matching hairstyles next week too, accidentally. Because this was not planned. So I know. Because, you have to slick back, so you have to have the bigger earrings. I had my little tiny hoops in, and I was like, ooh, that head looks big. We got to put some big earrings in. But it was so unplanned and just like so perfect. So I'm like, okay, are we going to start planning matching hairstyles? Yeah, matching energy. Today was just a good day. I hope everybody watching enjoyed it.
For sure.
Yeah.
I just want to throw out there that if you want to catch up on any episodes from season 1, last week's episode, you can catch that on Spotify. We are on iHeartRadio, Google, and Apple Podcasts. We're also on the Big Voice Radio. And what else is there? YouTube,
yes. And then coming up in the future, Trisha and I will be setting up a Native woman and girl space. So, of course, we'll keep you updated on that through here. We are just some busy beavers, but it is coming soon.
All right. With that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.